Hey, some guy here. Do you own a Jeep? Because if you do, I know two things that you have: an empty wallet and rust. And the thing about the empty wallet that really hurts the rust problem is you can't just buy new replacement OEM parts or better third-party upgrades. So in this one, we're gonna do it the cheap way. The easy way. Not the easy way. The easy way would be replacing it. The cheap way. So to address the rust over here on the running board of this, we are going to take Driveway's best friend liquid wrench. There are three 14mm bolts and six, read it, six 10mm bolts on each of the rails, so on each side. So a couple days before we start this project, start going under, spraying them down with this stuff once a day for 3 days, and it's gonna make removing these bolts a lot easier without just breaking them all off. But it's a Jeep, so all of them will probably still break right off.
The next day.
I recommend taking the 1/2 inchers out first, taking out the 10 mils except for the furthest two apart, and then I'll show you a nice trick for doing this yourself without having it drop on your face. Well, good news is we'll still be able to get it off. Bad news is future me is gonna have to figure out how to put it back on. Oh well. Because it's a Jeep, these back two are, this whole back section one that's the one that broke off, and these three are rounding off, so. 2 out of 3 of the 1/2 inch bolts without breaking. I'll take it. Now it's time for the 6 10mm. And the reason you're gonna want a crescent wrench for this is because a socket, even a shorty socket, where the 10 mils are positioned, that socket's gonna back up and start hitting the body or the tub of your Jeep. So socket's just gonna make things a little bit easier to maneuver, given the space Jeep so kindly engineered for us. Two down, 4 more to go. 4, that's how you count the number 4. So as I'm loosening this last one, I can hear, feel, and see this thing starting to shift out. So I'm gonna get a car jack, and I'm gonna put it at the halfway point where I think the balance is on this thing. So that way when I take it off, hopefully I can just lower it down with the car jack without it being super loud. Using Harbor Freight's new technology, the quick action pump. Not sponsored, please sponsor me, it would help pay the rent. Out. Well, I have these parts laid out. I think they might be symmetrical when they're flipped around the correct way, but also they're a little bent from the years of being used as a Jeep should be. So I just went down with a little construction grade pen, got left driver, right passenger. Hopefully I won't be able to mix them up. I'm sure I could, but hopefully I won't.
The next day.
Alright, so we just finished going over both of these, getting in all the nooks and crannies with the brush wheel. Time to get out the grinder. I think with just a sanding paper wheel, see how much more we can take down. But there's quite a few nooks and crannies that grinder is not going to get in there. have not done that inside of my garage. Wow. I wonder how much that actually reduced the thickness of these two sliders. All of this metal and probably some dirt has built up in here. That is why we're cleaning these out. Decade and a half on the road. Need some refurbishment. Taking these old plastic end caps that are just a little worn out. Don't really want to reuse them. I think we can do something a little better. That'll do. I think you see what I'm going for here. So the next step is going to be getting all the surface rust from the outside gone, and that's just going to be a couple hours, if not a couple days, of using all the grits of angle grinders. And so I'm not going to record it because you guys don't need to see me standing around doing this, but for the next couple hours I'm going to be hitting the wire wheel and the sanding pads. I got some heavier grit ones just picked up from the store, and I'm going to try and get all the surface rust off the outside here and get it as smooth as possible so that we can get these things painted and throw them back on there. So hopefully you'll see this next step. It's going to just cut to being sanded. So as you can see over my shoulder, we've got one of the sides already figured out, and I think I like how it turned out. So for this side, we're going to repeat that process. We're going to start with our good old friend Mechanic Huff, aka Brake Clean. We're going to get all the dirt and oil and grease and filth and little rust particles that got, sanded off and dusty everywhere. We're going to do that just to clean this thing up so we give the best chance of having the best results with our paint. Now, this is obviously not a professional paint booth. If you want this to actually turn out professionally, take it to a professional. That's not what we're here for. We're here for getting it done. Alright? So, I'm going to hit this with that, and then we'll go on to those things. So now that we've brake cleaned that all off, it's time to hit the masking tape. We just want to cover the threads of the 6 10mm bolts, or if you have 6, if any of them didn't break off for you. For me, we got 6 on each one. Hit that masking tape onto there. Simple as that. Yeah, that definitely didn't take me a minute. So the next step that we are going to do is we're going to be hitting it with some Rust-Oleum Rust Stop, and this is going to be used as the primer base layer, because as much as I've tried to clean this, grind down the sand, grind down the rust, get all the pitted spots of, the bad stuff that we're attempting to eliminate here, this will help prevent it, conceal what's still in there, and give the Rust-Oleum bed coat a good spot to bind onto, and hopefully give it the best chance at lasting long and looking good. So it's getting dark. You guys know how to paint, I hope. So I'm going to hit the primer, a couple of coats, then hit this bed liner, and you guys can see me tomorrow morning with what we've got.
2,000 years later.
So the paint is dry, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't love how it turned out on this one, and it's entirely due to my prep work. The sanding, or the removal of the old paint, just gummed up all the sanding wheels I used and sanding paper. I kind of glossed over it and was mostly looking at where to remove the rust, and so I addressed that of removing all the areas where the paint was deformed, and in my head I wasn't thinking about the aesthetics. I was thinking about, oh, I've addressed where the rust is. When I paint it over, it'll all look fine. But my goal was the rust. Aesthetically, I wish I would have just used a paint stripper. Don't really have a great place to do that, I suppose, the garage, but that would probably fumigate my house, given that it's a direct attached garage. So not gonna do that, just gonna move forward with it as it is, but food for thought, consider using a paint stripper to just clean all the paint off. Don't waste your time sanding the paint that's already on there, because that was just a total pain in the ass, and it didn't work great, and it gummed up all my sanding wheels. And then once you have that paint stripped off, then go ahead, hit the sanding wheel or the, whatever tool you want to do to get rid of that rust. So just food for thought. But I went to the good old-fashioned Ace Hardware and picked up some replacement of the 13mm bolts that we're going to be putting back into the main attachment point, and then I just cleaned up all of the 10mm nuts that go back onto the 6 bolts or studs that are on each of the 2 rails. So once again, if you're doing this 2-person, probably the easiest, but we're going to get that car jack back out so that we can help ourselves lift this into place as easy as possible and hopefully not scratch up our brand new paint to get these reinstalled. So I'm just getting them started by hand so this thing doesn't come down on my face. I already got all 6 of the 10mm bolts on, but I want to get these all started by hand just so I can make sure that, like that, I get everything to line up right, you know what I mean? I'd recommend putting some anti-seize on these bolts if I were you. I mean, Loctite is nice, but I like being able to remove things in the future. And now that I've got it started, use the Agga Dagga to send it home. I've been some guy, and this has been refurbishing the rock liner things on.
We are experiencing technical difficulties.
Well, I've been some guy, and this has been refurbishing the rock sliders on this 2010 Wrangler Rubicon. It was an interesting process that I thought would have taken me less time than it did. One thing that I've already touched on this, but I definitely think I'll be taking forward in projects. I should have probably tried to just commit to going and getting a paint remover, a stripper, something real toxic that just, get all that stuff off of there, because using a mechanical method such as the angle grinder or the rotary sander to get that off just gummed up the sanding pads. It was impossible. And so I kind of figured whatever, it would all blend together afterwards. As long as it wasn't an area with rust under it, I didn't care to remove it. And I can definitely see that in the after shots. I can definitely tell the areas that have that pre-existing texture to the areas that just have the fresh paint. And if that's something that bugs you, you should definitely take that extra step, remove all the paint. I think it's something I'll do in the future, a lesson learned, and that's what learning projects are about, I don't have the most experience painting. I'm not a huge automotive painter, and that's something that I'm sure some of you watching are probably thinking, yeah, no duh, but there's also people watching this that are definitely going to go, oh, good to know. Be sure to check out the other playlists or whatever YouTube algorithms recommends you from the channel. We've got a lot of Jeep Cherokee stuff, some Jeep Wrangler stuff, and other just outdoor woodworking projects. You want to see how we turn trees into lumber with the chainsaw, hit this video right here. Thanks for coming along. Subscribe, hit the buttons, do the things, interact, or don't. Doesn't really matter to me, this is just a hobby, but I enjoy doing it. So, we got a garage too. We're upgrading, moving up.